Hello everybody, and welcome to Ancient Architects. Please subscribe now to get the latest ancient history news and independent research from around the world. The information in this video is, in my opinion, a game changer with regards to our knowledge of early dynastic history of ancient Egypt. It is just a short video to show you something which I believe is possibly the most important anomaly I've ever come across, and it's also right outside the Khafre Pyramid. It's rarely spoken about and hardly anyone knows about it, but it ties in with my recent series of videos on the Giza Plateau. I'm not going to recap all the information again, I'll link the relevant videos in the description below. But these structures at Giza, marked here on this satellite photograph, are what I believe are either early dynastic or even pre-dynastic. And, as I've shown, there is plenty of geological evidence to back up such a claim. Evidence published over the years by the brilliant Colin Reeder. So, whilst diving into yet more research, I stumbled across the website of the LAI Research Centre, linked below, who published a great article and a number of pictures of various anomalies from the Giza Plateau. From these ancient cut marks on the basalt pavement located to the east of the Great Pyramid to the colossal megalithic blocks in the Wall of the Crow, they do discuss some interesting anomalies. But it was this particular anomaly that really grabbed my attention, and one they failed to explain. If this information is already known, my apologies in advance that I'm late to the show. But on the eastern side of the Khafre Pyramid, at the southern edge of the youngest half of the Mortuary Temple, the part next to the Khafre Pyramid as shown here, there is a strange patch of hard iron-rusted rock within the limestone bedrock. Now, those that aren't geologists will say that it's clear evidence of ancient technology, or maybe rusted machinery, maybe melted granite or some kind of stone, but the scientist in me thought otherwise. For a start, you can find iron nodules or iron veins in Carboniferous limestone, intrusive secondary deposits that came way after the limestone formed. And, without being able to inspect the deposit firsthand, this would be the most logical explanation for what we see. Furthermore, on the bedrock beneath the Khafre causeway, and all the way up to the Khafre Pyramid, we can see thin veins of a different coloured rock. Contrary to popular belief, there is no evidence of stone melting at this location, but we do see clear evidence of geological mineralisation, veins of a different rock type that geologically formed in the distant past. This mineralisation zone is potentially huge, and, here specifically, it certainly looks to be iron-rich due to the colour. Here is an example of an iron ore deposit in limestone from Kathmandu, discussed on a website I've linked below. Now look at it side by side with the deposit from Giza. In the 20th century, the chief mining products of Egypt were iron ore, phosphates and salt, with thousands of tons of iron produced each year. Iron is a natural resource of Egypt. But if this deposit we can see right here is a natural band of iron ore within the Giza limestone, then this to me is a huge game changer. But can we see if this band of iron has been worked? Is there any evidence of ancient mining? Because if there is, and I'll show you shortly, it could mean that the early dynastic Egyptians did have iron or even steel tools after all. The Giza Plateau could be so much more than pyramids, a sphinx, mastabas and limestone quarries. It could have been a major site of iron mining, rewriting the earliest history of ancient Egypt. We know that the early Egyptians did know how to mine for precious metals because there is evidence of gold mining all the way back to pre-dynastic times, and this increased dramatically in the Old Kingdom. The band of iron outside the Khafre Pyramid is directly beneath the limestone pavement next to the Mortuary Temple. It would have been visible in the Old Kingdom, and it also would have been levelled by the dynastic Egyptians, because, as we can see, they built over it. Therefore, if they knew it was here, maybe with further investigation, it could prove that Giza was in fact an ancient iron works, way before it became a necropolis, and maybe this is why it became one. Suddenly, the idea of ancient high technology, cutting granite and basalt with beautiful straight cuts, does get a little easier to understand. You can't easily cut granite using copper tools. Yes, it can be done, you can add sand and water, but it's so labour intensive that surely even a pharaoh, with the command of a great nation, might not bother with such efforts. It really isn't efficient use of time. And looking at some of the cuts we see, it just doesn't say to me that this stonework of ancient Egypt was done using copper, sand and water, as well as harder pounding stones of dolerite. But could these stone cuts have been done using iron and steel? Yes, they could, and if they were, it would certainly explain a lot of the mysteries of ancient Egypt. The conventional view is that early Egyptian iron was inferior to copper because cast iron is brittle. Even wrought iron is too soft to make good tools, and so it needs to be hardened and turned into a type of steel, which of course is a lengthy and skilled process. Saying that, and we know that steel was manufactured in ancient Anatolia from at least 1800 BC, so why not Egypt? Quality iron in ancient Egypt is thought to have been acquired from meteorites, or from trading with neighbouring countries, but maybe they produced it as well, and we just haven't found the evidence because over time iron corrodes, and maybe Egyptologists have misinterpreted the clear evidence for ancient iron mining. It is thought that iron existed in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid, as seen by these rectangular patches on the ceiling. And there was also an iron plate that was found at the opening of the King's Chamber southern air shaft on the outside of the pyramid. Flinders Petrie believed that this iron was truly ancient and used in the pyramid's creation, and its composition proved that it wasn't meteoric. It also contained a nummulitic growth, and the iron also contained traces of gold. Discovering ancient iron at Giza would be a game changer, and I think iron or steel tools is the only logical explanation for many of the structures that we see in the Old Kingdom, and now I've seen an obvious iron deposit on the Giza Plateau. And, as I'll show you now, this iron was worked. Directly within the iron deposit, there is clearly a man-made opening, or as I should say, there was an opening, which I'll discuss later. But, as you can see from the entrance, the extent of the iron deposit is quite large. Now, why would you have a subterranean opening inside a clear iron-rich deposit on the Giza Plateau? The answer? Because what we're looking at is a mine. Going inside and the cavity is huge, but it's also a very irregular shape, yet purposefully cut into the bedrock. The cavity goes on for some distance and the interior walls are limestone bedrock, but the iron-rich rock is seen everywhere, as you can see in this picture. This is a clear and obvious sign that the iron ore was mined. As you walk through, the ceiling becomes the floor of the Khafre Mortuary Temple, and, as you can see from this picture, you can see the limestone slabs from below. There's no evidence that this was a tomb, it's not inscribed, and it certainly isn't a temple. It's also Old Kingdom at the latest, it's totally irregular yet clearly worked by man. It isn't often discussed because the Egyptological interpretation is that this is a simple boat pit, which, based on our knowledge of the Giza Plateau, looks nothing like a boat pit in any way, shape or form. It has a different shape to any boat pit discovered at Giza. In its central part and cross-section, the cavity resembles a kind of bottle with a high neck. At a certain depth, the lower part also expands to the sides. The floor in the central part is a strange shape and there are strange protrusions like frames. On the eastern edge of the cavity there is a narrow hole, which is likely a crude air shaft. Continuing to the east, and the cavity deepens again but forms a long narrow gap. What we are looking at is clearly the remnants of an old mine, and it has an irregular shape because mines follow the seams of the ore or mineral being extracted. The walls of the mine are limestone bedrock coated with iron ore, clear signs that the iron has been extracted. Some parts of the cavity are very narrow, and this is because iron ores often crystallise in limestone deposits as thin veins. The protrusions or frames in the bedrock that we see are likely to have housed wooden frames, which supported the rock as mining took place, as shown in this example here. The LAI Research Centre didn't offer an interpretation for what they saw, but they did dismiss the idea that it was once a boat pit. I strongly believe that this is iron mining on the Giza Plateau, and if I was allowed access, I think I could prove it geologically. But here lies the problem. These pictures of the inside and the outside of the cave were taken in the year 2006. But in a more recent video from the channel Enigmas of the Ancient World, they show that the entrance to the mine has been filled up and covered over, removed from view and seemingly removed from history. Nobody can now prove that this was a mine because nobody can go inside. What we do know is that the slabs of the Mortuary Temple are laid over the cavity, meaning the mine must predate the pyramid and the newer part of the Mortuary Temple of Khafre. Therefore, it looks as though the western end of the ancient bedrock road that lies beneath the Khafre causeway was once an iron mining operation, before any temple was built. Iron that was probably taken back down the causeway to the waterfront, where the Sphinx Temple and Valley Temple are situated today. From here, it would have been taken away to be worked. I can't think of any other reason to have a very specific cave at this location, within a large and prominent iron-rich deposit. And it clearly wasn't any sort of tomb, temple or boat pit. It looks just like an ancient mine, following the seams of iron ore and hence the irregular shape of the interior. If anyone has a better explanation, I would of course love to hear it, so please comment below. So, in my opinion, the information in this video is a game changer, because if it's correct, it means that the early dynastic Egyptians were mining iron specifically on the Giza Plateau, at least before the Khafre Pyramid was built. Furthermore, it was mined on the part of the plateau that had the oldest human occupation and also the oldest structures, at the end of an ancient road that linked to the waterfront, as I've identified in recent videos. In ancient Egypt, iron was the metal of heaven, because the dynastic Egyptians only really knew it from meteorites. We are told that iron deposits in Egypt were not worked until the late or Greco-Roman periods, but maybe this is totally wrong. Maybe Giza was associated with the gods and became a sacred landscape because it was also once a source of iron in the most ancient times, a metal that some say was more precious than gold. Maybe iron and steel is the ancient high technology that time has forgot, through the various upheavals, conquests and intermediate periods that littered dynastic history. Maybe the ancient Egyptians had the knowledge but lost it, and that's why the most ancient stonework of Egypt does seem to be the very best. I need to go into this mine and look at its relationship to the Old Kingdom structures above, but of course this now isn't possible. Even if it is datable to the 4th dynasty, it still rewrites history. But to me, it looks like it could well be even older. As I've shown in recent videos, the bedrock road beneath the Khafre causeway, the Khafre Valley Temple, and also I believe this part of the Khafre Mortuary Temple are the oldest things on the Giza Plateau, and even predate the Great Sphinx and the Sphinx Temple. And now I think I know the reason why. The road in question led to an incredibly important site of iron mining, the metal of heaven, that could be used to forge tools to cut the hard stones such as granite. It was a sacred landscape simply because of its raw materials, and what was left by the ancient miners were a few ancient structures, a roadway, and also the caves from the mining. Interestingly, Andrew Collins has shown there is a cave that leads from the Tomb of the Birds directly underneath the Khafre Pyramid, and it leads towards the site of mining in front of the Khafre Pyramid. I would suggest that this was another mined seam of iron-rich rock. Furthermore, looking at a few of the pictures from Collins, I do think I can see iron staining on his cave walls. No wonder the dynastic Egyptians turned Giza into a representation of Sokar's underworld. Ancient caves were widespread, and I believe that this was because the pre-dynastic or early dynastic Egyptians were mining iron. I really feel that this is the missing link in our understanding of ancient Egypt. And the funny thing is that mining iron may well be the first thing that ever took place at Giza, and the reason amazing structures and objects could be carved from the hardest rocks. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Ancient Architects. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and please leave a comment below. Thank you very much.